Welcome to Expert Profiles Atlanta, where Atlanta's influencers and innovators share strategies for overcoming obstacles and achieving success in business and life. Here's your host, best-selling author and Atlanta influencer, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Mimi Adeogba, aka Yogini Mimi. She is an internationally recognized yoga instructor and owner of Swadhyaya Yoga School. Having spent the last 2 years in India, Yogini Mimi has coached and transformed hundreds of yoga practitioners in mindfulness and self-awareness based on ancient yogic principles. Yogini Mimi empowers future and experienced yoga teachers and yoga studio owners to create effective strategies for increasing sales with less effort by creating transformative experiences for their students. She has led over 25 yoga teacher training courses over the past 2 years, training over 600 yoga instructors from all over the world, including Korea, Vietnam, Australia, India, Argentina, Venezuela, France, Italy, the US, Canada, UK, Egypt, Ecuador, Finland, Germany, Russia, and Thailand, just to name a few. Well, you've certainly been exposed to a lot of different people from a lot of different countries, Mimi. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil.
Well, I'm really interested to just hear exactly what it is that you have going on and what you do to help these people that have a passion for yoga. I must admit, I am an amateur myself. I do love to do it, but don't make the time for it that I probably should. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and who it is that you actually help.
You know, I think that what you said there, you don't make the time for it, is one of the main reasons why a lot of people have a little bit of fear around yoga. So I am a yoga instructor and I instruct yoga teachers. And more than just instructing yoga teachers, people who are interested in deepening their own expression of yoga, or elevating, I like to say, instead of deepen, just raising that up a little bit, are the types of professionals who I help. And even if they already have an established practice, if they're experienced and they are teachers of others, I help them create strategies for implementing effective and transformative experiences for their students through teacher training courses, through creating a business plan and a mission statement and understanding what the value is that they're looking to bring to their communities. So I teach yoga curious, I teach those elevating their yoga practice, and I teach teachers of teachers, teachers of others. And that pretty much summarizes what I do. But to go into what the whole discipline is a whole nother story, because it can be very involved, the whole yoga background, yoga principles.
That's right. There's so many different forms of yoga, it seems, as well, that you could get lost in trying to explain what yoga is to one singular person. Yeah. So, you deal mainly with the teaching aspect of it now. How did you start out with yoga? What drew you to it?
Yeah, I do deal mainly with the teaching aspect, and it's the transfer of knowledge that I've always been attracted to. I grew up in a family of teachers. So in one aspect or another, I was always teaching others something that I had already learned. When I was younger, it would have been things like Spanish, a foreign language, grammar, spelling, sciences. When I got to the university, I was teaching others biology and algebra and calculus after I had learned those subject matters as a tutor. And then as I continued to grow, my parents thought that I would become some kind of a teacher, an educator. And so it's kind of always been in my blood to be an educator or a teacher of some form or another. So eventually, I earned a doctorate in naturology, natural health and healing. So I started teaching my clients towards more effective ways or choices of lifestyle to overcome existing conditions that they had created in their own body for a series of bad habits or unhealthy habits they had been practicing. So I was teaching them how to shift their mindset and how they related to health with that background in naturology and natural health and healing. Helping them tap into their own body's innate ability or wisdom to heal. And then eventually I found myself in pharmaceutical sales. And as a pharmaceutical sales manager, I went through the hierarchy of first being a sales rep and then being a sales trainer. And once again, I found myself conveying knowledge to a large group of people, how to effectively communicate that information to their physicians while they were out in the territory. But that job had its toll on me, and energetically, it kind of just took away a lot. It didn't contribute to my overall health. So I found myself looking at what was next for me from that 8-year career. And what was next for me was yoga. I had already had an established foundation from my parents. My mom taught us sun salutations when we were children, and I grew up practicing martial arts. So I already had this foundation in moving the body and understanding how certain things that we do can affect our overall health. But when I undertook to learn yoga, it was more than just to heal myself from my previous choices. It was also with that mindset that I could actually continue to teach others. And so that became the foundation upon which my development into teaching other teachers occurred. First, I started teaching other practitioners, people who were also interested in establishing a yoga lifestyle through asanas, which is the postures. And then eventually, as I grew, my ability to teach others how to teach evolved.
Well, it definitely seems like teaching is in your background, and that sales part probably came in handy. Not that it was something that you might not have enjoyed the most, but many people fall into their passion, which it seems like that is what you have done as well, Mimi. But what problems do they have? I'm sure you come across a lot of these other yoga instructors that have fallen into this passion and they've started their own yoga studio. You know, what problems do you see them experiencing?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And so this is where that whole unique skill set, transferable skill set with sales and marketing comes into play. So I have this background now in creating and developing curriculum for Salesforce and Salesforce implementation of strategy. And here I am as a yoga teacher. And one of the things I didn't realize when I started teaching other teachers was that many of them were running into obstacles like, well, now, how do I make a living off of being a yoga teacher? And then that is where I came into the mix to be able to add value to their yoga teacher training experience with at the time, it was a very brief period of time that we spent on what's next. But as time evolved in that 1-hour lecture or discussion, I found myself requiring more time. So it started off with just 1 hour of helping the students understand what the options are now that they have their credentials for teaching yoga. And then it evolved to, well, how do I create a business plan? What do I do next? And I saw that one of the main things that the yoga curious who had now elevated their own practice, or those who had already elevated their own practice and were teaching others, were running into was that they thought that what was next was jumping right in and teaching others. And I had to take them back a step and show them that it was more than just teaching others. You had to create a vision, and from that vision, define what your audience is before you start jumping out and trying to do something. So you had to actually pre-plan. And it's funny because one of my mentors in the pharmaceutical industry always used to say the 6 F's. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. And so then that had become something that I was constantly teaching the students. You have to prepare before you start, saying, I want to have a yoga studio. You have to define the parameters under which you wish to move forward as a yoga teacher.
So what kind of levels do we have when we're thinking about yoga teachers? I see yoga studios popping up now all over the place in the locality, but they're also in the health clubs, and I'm sure people do it out of their home as well. What's the progression there?
Yeah, there are several different ways that people can go into the yoga business. Some go into it in debt. And that's where they go, they create a business plan, they go to the bank, and they withdraw a heavy loan so that they can have the brick and mortar establishment. Other people wish to travel as a yoga teacher, and so there are options for people who just have wanderlust and want to keep mobile and continue to earn some income as they go so that it could fuel their travel. Other people start with doing it right out of their own homes. If they have a nice studio space and their home is in a very nice location, they can do it that way. You can also volunteer at schools or at prisons to bring yoga into the underserved populations for free. And this is a volunteer basis where you're not really getting the financial benefit, but you're definitely building your credibility in the community. I started off with a mobile yoga studio, so I would go to networking groups and share with those groups that I have yoga and I can come to you, which gives it a little bit more of a premium because the students are then paying because of the not having to travel to you and you're traveling to them and bringing the yoga studio to them. So there are a number of different ways that you can teach yoga, and I discuss all of those things with my clients as they're preparing for their version of what's next for them.
And let's talk about travel for a minute, because you've obviously done quite a bit of travel in your search for experience in yoga. How does that work as far as becoming an income generator if you're traveling all the time?
So at the earlier stages of traveling, one needs to really build up their credibility and integrity before they're able to start generating a real income off of traveling. But for me, when I started into the yoga practice, it was about 2 years in that I went to a convention and I was meeting all of these yoga teachers that had been invited to this convention to come and teach from their respective states or countries. And it was a Southeast Yoga Conference, and it was here in Atlanta. And they had speakers from Australia and Florida and California. And the question arose for me, how did you get to be where you are today in terms of being invited as a guest panelist or being invited as a guest yoga instructor for a convention? And there's Wanderlust, and there's any number of other types of yoga conventions going on. So that started my inquiry into how can I travel and be an authority in the space so that I can bring yoga to the masses in that way. And so I started doing the research and investigating what it would take. But my journey for traveling actually began when I traveled to India to be a yoga teacher there in India. And after completing my training, I went to the owner of the school and I expressed an interest in remaining for more education, more opportunity to teach or to learn. And because of my background, because of my passion, because of my skill set, the doors opened up for me. But it was mostly being able to have that conversation with him and expressing that at the time, money is not an option, because that's important that you don't be letting money drive you, especially in the yoga field, but that understanding that it will come. So he really gravitated towards my vision and how I communicated and the information I was sharing when I was teaching. And he allowed me to stay and continue to teach for the next 2 years. As a result of getting out to that larger population, and that's where the population dynamic started to expand beyond just the U.S. student. And it was in India, in fact, that school was attracting this global recognition. So students from all over the world were coming to this school to learn. And it was there that I was exposed to other nationalities who saw my teaching style, saw how effective I was at communicating, saw how determined and dedicated I was to my own self-study, which is what Swadhyaya means, is self-study, in order to enhance my own platform and knowledge for communicating this information. That the opportunities to teach in France, Italy, the Czech Republic, the UK, and in Hong Kong all started to arise. And so I just started, after that point, riding the wave, so to speak.
Excellent. Well, it's a fun ride. It certainly seems to be able to travel and do what you love.
Oh,
Let's talk
yes.
about the certification level for a yoga instructor. What do you need to be certified to be able to teach?
I will add, it is an exciting ride. In order to be able to teach, a person needs some training, and the foundational training comes with 200-hour certification. There are a number of different ways people can do this. There are different programs across the US and across the world that one can enroll in for their 200-hour yoga teacher certification. I myself train students for the 200-hour yoga teacher certification through Swadhyaya Yoga School. But the 200 hours can be an immersion course where the student dives in for 28 days and they just turn off their cell phone, commit to being there, immersed 100% into their practice. Another option in the US, which is all over the place, are intensive courses which span several weekends, and some of them can go as long as 2 years, with going into training every other or every third or fourth weekend. And some of them, like one that I have designed recently in the US, can be every weekend, and that's much more intensive. So the student has to put aside at least 8 weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday is just in the evening, and then Saturday is all day, Sunday is all day, for this type of intensive training. So that can look like a number of different ways. From my own experience in observing the students when they're doing the teacher training, the information retention is so much higher, and the student goes so much deeper into their own understanding and establishing a foundation when they do the immersion. But for a number of reasons, not everybody can commit to doing an immersion where they're doing 28 days back to back. Yes. So then after they've established themselves with their 200-hour certification, they'll get some experience, and that may be a year or 2 years. And some people will go back to back and get 10 weeks of training, immersion, and study for their 200-hour certification and their 300-hour certification. But I recommend that the student take some time to really wear on this new pair of shoes and break them in, so to speak, practicing teaching and deepening their own practice and learning some more before they continue on with their 300-hour certification. And when they do it that way, maybe taking a year to 3 years to deepen their own study, their self-study, then they become an experienced yoga teacher. And so that's the difference between the 200-hour who goes continuously on to learn for their 300-hour or a 500-hour curriculum, and the 200-hour who takes some time and marinates in their newfound skill set before continuing on to their 300-hour certification. And then after the 300-hour certification, they become an experienced yoga teacher who can actually now start teaching other yoga teachers and create their own school, which is where I'm at now.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about generating income, because obviously once you have the certification, you've gone through the time and the trouble and the learning experiences of your 2, 3, or 500-hour. How do you start to generate the income from there?
The income can be generated through, and I say this all the time, the most important thing is your network, getting to know people and getting people to know you. And you can use your social media platform. You can tap into a number of different resources. Like when I first started, I joined a Business Networking International, BNI, which is a really big networking group that's global and with chapters in different states all over the country and all over. I was in Istanbul, and I saw at the hotel a BNI chapter meeting in Istanbul. And so when I say all over, I mean literally all over the world. And it was a very nice platform. Social media is also a nice platform for getting the word out. And most of what is going to benefit the student or the one who's seeking to generate an income is word of mouth, because there are the market is becoming more and more saturated with yoga teachers, and so building your brand and building your identity and differentiating yourself from the next teacher is mostly going to be from those students who have had an experience learning from you, who are going back and sharing with others that this is the teacher that you want to go to. And I can't impress upon your audience enough how that word of mouth will influence and inspire growth in your business like none other. So really cultivating that foundation of your students who become your loyal students, your voice when you're not around, the ones who are constantly your cheerleaders and advocating for you, letting other people know that you're awesome. So when you start creating that foundation, ensuring that those students start writing referrals for you and putting your referrals up on your website. So there's a whole strategy involved with implementation after you've created your vision, your mission plan, your business plan, and then how to implement that moving forward with social media, website development, creating your business cards, electronic and physical, and advertising and different ways of advertising. And you with your SEO optimization are somebody who I really want to talk to more about that, because that's something else that I'm learning about now too, SEO.
Yes, definitely helps. Well, people that have a passion for doing what they do sometimes don't realize that there is a business aspect to it as well, and you have to take care of those things, so they are extremely important. Mimi, where do you see yoga going in the next 5 to 10 years? You said that it's getting more and more saturated. How do you see things progressing?
Well, that is a great question, because there have been some quotes stating that the yoga industry is growing to like a $27 billion industry in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's for me, it's compelling, because when you talk to yoga instructors like myself, you see them running around. Let's talk about in the US. You see them running around trying to work 14 different yoga classes per week at 5 different studios with 6 to 10 private clients. And they're just, here we are teaching students how to come back to center and become balanced and release the stress. And the yoga teachers who I see here in the US are the antithesis of what we're teaching, because of how undervalued they are. So once a student completes their yoga teacher training course, if they go to a LA Fitness or a Gold's Gym and ask if they can work there, they can expect to earn like $20 per hour. And then the studio might ask them to come in 30 minutes earlier and stay 30 minutes later for the students who have any questions. So you're looking at 2 hours, but they're only getting paid for the 1 hour. And then if you're in Atlanta, for example, you have to sit in traffic in order to get to your destination, and then in order to get home. So it really is 3 hours that they only got paid $20 for. So there's no real return on all that labor. And so when I hear these statistics that yoga is a $27 billion industry, and I talk to the teachers, the yoga teachers, I'm like, but it's not the yoga teachers who are really benefiting from the investment of all these people into their yoga practice. It's really the apparel and the yoga mats and the yoga blocks and those kinds of structures that are really making all the money. And you see everybody walking around in yoga pants nowadays, whether they're going to a class or not. It's like, it's a style.
So how do you combat then? How do you turn it into a real business that, you're not going to, spend 80 hours a week doing, but still enjoy and make money?
And that's what I teach. So with elevating those teachers who are seeking to elevate their own yoga practice as teachers, I help them to create transformative experiences for themselves and others through their yoga teaching curriculum. So how do you now take it from just teaching the individual to teaching the masses? And in addition to that, I help them to create platforms to support travel. So more and more people are interested in traveling and going to destinations for yoga retreats and yoga teacher training courses. So I help my clients tap into that. Yoga enthusiasts who are seeking to continue to teach and refine their practice and teaching skills in a venue like Bali, where I'm going to be in November teaching yoga teacher training course, or in India because of my connections to India. So helping them to create these innovative ways for generating income in an increasingly saturated brick and mortar space. And that's what I help to do. And we do that through strategizing, through implementing these strategies, through accountability conversations, and through creating a platform. And through my connection with you now and a dear mentor of mine, I've created a podcast as a platform for those yogis and yoginis to tell their story and get their voices out. So creating these platforms and these strategies to help them tap into this $27 billion industry. And that's where I come into play, connecting those two as a bridge.
Well, that's certainly another great platform, is the podcast. Talk about another niche that is absolutely exploding. The podcast is definitely a great platform to get your message across. Now, Mimi, talk about some of the misconceptions people have about yoga, either from a practitioner or from somebody that is trying to make money from yoga.
I get this one all the time. And this is one of the questions that I'm addressing in my platform at the early stages is, what is yoga? If a student has not come to my class, or a reputable, credible yogi, and there are many who are out there, they are under the impression that yoga is about fitness. It's all about the physical aspect. And that's why you see this upcropping of more trendy things like beer yoga, goat yoga, trap yoga. And I'm not knocking them. They all have their place in attracting people to come to yoga. But yoga is more than just about fitness. Patanjali has stated in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is the foundational text for yoga, that there are 8 limbs of yoga. So it's really, when they're going for the booty yoga, trap yoga, that is just 1/8 of what yoga really is. And it's really taking away the essence of what yoga is, because yoga is going in and finding balance within so that you can be a more productive and balanced individual in your community and your society. And all of our senses are already situated external. So everything that we do in life is already outward, like the listening to music, the eating, the dancing, the playing with cute goats and cute puppies. So that's one of the misconceptions, is that, yoga is all about the physical. Another misconception is that you have to be flexible to go to yoga. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people who've said, I want to start practicing yoga, but I'm just not flexible. I'm like, well, yoga will get you there. You don't have to be there in order to practice it. You need to practice it in order to be there. So it's kind of like role reversal there in many people's psychology as they relate to what yoga is. And then a third one is that yoga is a religion. And that couldn't be further from the truth, because yoga is, it seeks to actually take religion out of it. And it's really about the individual. And one of my teachers, I really like how he stated this, and so I'm going to use it. He says, yoga is the optimal functioning of the human organism. And when we talk about it not just being physical, the optimal functioning of the human organism is the spiritual. It is the physical, but it's also the emotional, the mental, and the social. So we're looking at a full, holistic look at who you are being in your community and helping to improve that being so that you can have a more effective life.
Now, Mimi, give me some examples, if anybody springs to mind, of somebody that you've really helped. They wanted to, start out and teach yoga. You weren't necessarily sure how to do that. How were you able to, help them along, and, what difference did it make to their life?
One teacher comes to mind. A number of teachers come to mind. Actually, a dear colleague of mine is coming to mind right now. When I first met her, she was teaching in India, and she had been teaching the yoga teacher training courses for about 5 years before I met her. She was one of my teachers, in fact. And she has the Indian background. And as a female in the Indian culture, there is a sense of duty and responsibility to the family first. And so she had a restricted mindset in terms of what the possibilities were that existed for her. And over the next 2 years that she coached me and taught me the foundation that I needed to be an effective yoga teacher of other teachers, I shared with her how to shift her mindset so that she could see the possibilities, the endless possibilities for where her expertise could take her. So she started cultivating a broader perspective on what her gifts were and stepping out of certain limiting beliefs that she held about what she could possibly do. And through the work and through the development, it was kind of an exchange in this way, you could say, through the coach of unless you're married, an Indian married person, but she bought her own condo. And can you still hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. And inevitably, last year, 2017, was the first time that she taught out of country. And so she and I collaborated on a yoga teacher training course in Indonesia, where she, for the first time ever, took her gifts to another country. And we're collaborating on another endeavor for her to come to the US for the first time ever to continue sharing her gift with others. And it was through this, I call it dreaming. You know, you start envisioning what it is that you want and start planning towards that rather than saying or staying in the mindset of what is not possible in order to move forward with what is possible. So you write down what it is that the big, hairy, audacious goal is, like going to the U.S. in her case. And then you put that out into the universe. And then you start saying, okay, so what would it take to go to the U.S.? And once you start asking the questions, you'd be surprised at how often the answers start coming up. But it's when you do not have the question, it's the absence of the question that creates the obstacle. But once you find the question, the answer reveals itself. And so we started asking those questions that would take her towards that big, hairy, audacious goal. And now it's becoming a reality.
Well, there's certainly a lot to talk about. Yoga, like you said, it is a huge industry. There's so many people that are, trying to get involved, whether it's through teaching or whether it is just doing it as a daily practice. It is certainly an industry that is attracting a lot of attention right now. So, Mimi, if people want to get in touch with you for your expertise, what is the best way for them to do that?
There are a number of different ways that a person can get in touch with me. One of them is through my website. Right now I have a yoga teacher training course coming up in Bali, and then we have plans for 2019 in Maryland and in Italy and in Atlanta again, and in Indonesia again. So a person who is looking to get in contact with me can do so through Swadhyaya Yoga School.com, which is the website for the school, and they'll find all sorts of information on me and teachers and the curriculum. And that is www.s like Sierra, W like Waco, A like Alpha, D like Delta, H like Hotel, Y like Yankee, A like Alpha, Y like Yankee, A like Alpha, Y like Yankee, O Oscar, G Golf, A Alpha, S Sierra, C Charlie, H Hotel, OOL.com. So that's SwadhyayaYogaSchool.com. They can also email me at Yogini, Y-O-G-I, N like Nancy, I, M like Mary, I, M like Mary, I, Z or Z if you're in Canada and Europe, at gmail.com. And then finally, through my social media platforms on Instagram, it's Yogini_Mimi, just like the previous spelling, but without the Z. And on Facebook, it's Swadhyaya, just like the previous spelling, SWADHYA.Y.S like Sierra. And also on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, they can do a search for Saint, S-A-I-N-T, Adeogba, A Alpha, D Delta, E Echo, O Oscar, G Golf, B Bravo, A Alpha. So those are all of my contact points.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure to include all them in the show notes here so that you'll be able to click on them. But I'm glad you got that all in audio as well. And we're really looking forward to hearing your own podcast, which is going to be on this Business Innovators radio channel as well. And what is going to be the name of that podcast? Do you have that yet?
That one is Shift Happens on the Path of Yoga.
Excellent. Well, we're definitely looking forward to hearing more from you. Yogini Mimi Adeogba, thank you very much for being my guest on Expert Profiles Atlanta today.
Thank you, Neil. It was a pleasure.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Thank you for listening to Expert Profiles Atlanta with Neil Howe. To learn more about the resources in the show or to listen to past episodes, visit expertprofilesatlanta.com.